Hello everyone, this is Curtis Brown, your instructor for HSEP 302. I just want to post a quick video here to kick off week two in your syllabus. And so again, I'm trying to keep these pretty short each week, about 10 minutes or so, both to recap last week and discuss this week's reading and discussion question. First, I want to do a quick update related to the book. I just spoke to VCU Bookstore. They told me that the digital version of the textbook is available if you access their website. And so I guess there's a process for registering and paying for the textbook, and you'll have the digital version to pull it up in your laptop or iPad or other device. They did tell me that the hard copy will not be available until later this week. So I'll still check back with them to confirm when the hard copy is available, but per the VCU Bookstore, the digital version is available now. So just to recap last week, I'm going to continue to try to reach out to a few of you all. I know with the discussion board question, I asked you to provide a little introduction of yourself, a little bit of background, and also your favorite place. I love the diversity of the profession interests. Many of you all in public safety, homeland security, emergency management related fields, both domestically and internationally, some in foreign affairs and other areas. I still think that there's some really good tie-in and correlation with emergency planning and incident management and emergency management, the things that we'll discuss in this course. And so, again, glad you all are interested in those career fields. We definitely need you. And so part of this course, I'll provide my perspective based on my career, what you might face. And again, the class is designed from a practitioner standpoint. I'm a practitioner in emergency management. So, one of the things you had to do last week is look at the Essential Emergency Manager video. This video came out a couple of years ago. I thought it was, nice animation to keep it light, but it really kind of highlighted what the roles and responsibilities of emergency managers are. Emergency managers, they're not law enforcement, they're not fire, they are master coordinators. They're logistic experts. They're able to pull together the proper pieces to deal with an incident of a larger scale. And as we've seen the last couple of years, we've been dealing with more and more of these incidents of scale, these large-scale disasters and emergencies. And so the ability to plan and understand the capabilities of multiple entities and pull them together in a cohesive way is an effective and efficient way is what the role of emergency manager is. And so that is why I suggested to you to start and complete the FEMA Independent Study Certificate for the National Response Framework. The National Response Framework essentially shows how on a national scale we handle the response to emergencies. What is the role of the federal government, state government, local government, nonprofit and private, and also the citizen. So those two elements of last week's assignments really complement each other, and wanted you to at least get a baseline of, again, what the role of emergency manager is, how emergency managers should think and act, and what their role is amongst the other public safety disciplines. Part of the question for last week's section board question was to ask you where your favorite place was, and it was great to see the large diversity of favorite places that you all have. Some inland, some coastal, some in high concentrated, highly populated urban areas. I think someone said Miami, some domestic, some international. And so when you look at these different places, they all have unique attributes when you look at it from a risk perspective. And again, a concept that we use is all hazards. From a natural hazard standpoint, some areas are more vulnerable to coastal impacts. hurricanes coming on the coast, land erosion, and things of that sort. Some are inland that deals with other unique issues, maybe like earthquakes and things of that sort. From a homeland security man-made perspective, some areas are highly dense, have significant critical infrastructure and landmarks, where there's possibly a higher likelihood of terrorism events. Clearly, domestic terrorism and violence could occur anywhere, but we all know that the city of New York clearly understands the threat of terrorism, given that it has occurred there before. We understand that D.C., given its significance in terms of being the nation's capital, is highly aware of the threat of terrorism as well. So any of the places that you mentioned, as an emergency manager, you can look at it through the framework of natural risks and hazards and threats and prioritize which ones are most likely and which ones are less likely. And so that is what you're asked to do this week with your discussion board question, to consider your favorite place, mention that, of course, in your post, remind folks, and then consistent with the reading, consider your favorite place from a risk and threat and hazards perspective. And I've also asked you to do a little bit of prioritization, which threats and hazards are most likely and which are least likely. There's also a consequence of prioritization. You could have a less likely hazard or risk, but the impacts and the consequence could be great. And a good example of this is, it's possible that an asteroid could come and impact the Earth. Well, knock on wood, the likelihood of an asteroid hitting and impacting Earth is relatively low, and we do have a federal agency that tracks that, NASA. We do have to consider, I'm sure there's an asteroid plan NASA has and the federal government has, but the likelihood is low, the consequence is high. More than likely, for most places on the state, federal, local level, we plan for the risks that have occurred. We have research and documentation that it's occurred over time. We know how many hurricanes has impacted Virginia. We know that we're a coastal state. Clearly, that's a high threat. Based on locations, we know we have a large congregated number of people, like at a football or a basketball game. We know that there's a potential for an active shooter or some type of attempt for some type of bombing, and so we do planning based on the understanding of that threat and tactics that have been used by terrorists in the past. So part of this activity is to look at your favorite plays, consider it from a risk perspective. Reading the textbook, you'll get a good understanding of the definition of risk, threat, and hazard. There is some overlap and correlation, but they are unique terms. Hopefully a lot of you all will download the online textbook. If not, you're still able to complete the assignment this week. You'll just have to come back and read Chapter 2, which focuses on natural and technological hazards and risk assessment. The reference reading, and when I use the term reference reading, I'm saying you don't have to read each and every aspect of it, but you should get a good understanding of the document and the core concepts in it. And so for the reference reading, I've asked you to look at, and this is all in the course document section, the DHS FEMA Threat Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment Guide, CPG 201. As a requirement of FEMA grants, many urban areas have to submit a THIRA, a Threat Hazard Identification Risk Assessment, acronym THIRA. And so it's good to understand how that is done, what are the steps to put that together. I've also added a web link or ready.gov talking about risk assessment. That's both helpful for government emergency management planners, but I think it also references risk assessment from a perspective of a business owner, for a business owner to understand their risk. So please submit your response to the discussion board question by 6 p.m. on Wednesday, and then proceed to reflect on your classmates' post. Regarding the discussion board questions, and I've had this issue in the past, folks sometimes just submit a 1 or 2 sentence post. You will not get full credit for a 1 or 2 sentence post. I really want these to be thoughtful, conversational. You do not have to reference, from an APA standpoint, list your references, but I do want you to integrate the course reading into your post, and I want it to be thoughtful. I at a minimum 2 paragraphs. Clearly, I want to see that you're applying the course material and understanding it, and that's demonstrated by your ability to put a quality post, well written as well, but quality post up. And likewise, when you respond to your classmates, reflect on what they said, add a perspective that they might have not considered. I want everyone to be respectful and courteous, but feel free to engage one another to consider or add perspective to what they had provided, or maybe provide a different opinion, but of course in a respectful fashion. So wanted to start off the semester again, focus on you're an emergency manager, you're new to a place, what are the threats and risks and hazards? That is the first step for initiating the process of planning. You got to know what you're dealing with. So I'm at the 12-minute mark, a little over 12 minutes, so I'm going to stop here. Feel free again to ask me any questions about the syllabus, and look forward to continue learning with you over the course of the semester. Feel free to reach out via email, and I'll respond. My goal is within 24 hours. All right, folks, have a good rest of the week. Thanks.